What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Tribe of Millionaires podcast from GoBundance. I'm your host, Jamie Gruber, and today I had the privilege of welcoming in Eric Wood. Eric is a former Pro Bowl lineman for my beloved Buffalo Bills, so he's a guy that I definitely was excited to get on today. He played 9 years in the NFL. He was a first-round draft pick, and he went from one scholarship offer at Louisville, and I think it was as a tight end, and then started moving inside the line to eventually being a center. And in that time at Louisville, he was a center toward the end of his career there. He was able to propel himself to a first-round pick in the NFL and had a really good career. Again, Pro Bowl, twice nominated Walter Payton Man of the Year, was on a playoff team in his last year before his career sort of suddenly ended. And he talks about that in this episode. But the point of today was really to get from him what it took to sort of go from one scholarship offer to first round pick, the goals, the vision, the work, the effort, all of that to get there. And then once you achieve this massive goal, how do you go to that next level? And we talked about that, people that he felt were great competitors and the traits of those competitors, habits and routines. We talked about kids and a lot of different topics. It was really a wide-ranging interview. I sort of abandoned the script of what I was going to go through as he talked more, and I picked out things that he was talking about because it was very, very interesting to have this conversation with him. So I'd love to hear what you think about it. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, drop a comment, like this video, and let us know what you think about this interview with Eric Wood. Eric, welcome, man. Good to have you.
I appreciate it. Heck of an intro. Well done, brother.
Absolutely. I'm doing my best. So let me start with, because not everybody's going to know your story. Let's go with sort of Louisville forward. So you got a scholarship offer to Louisville. Take us through your journey. I know you've done this a few times, so I'm sure you have it pretty tight, and we'll take that and dissect it as we go.
Yeah, the easiest subject to always talk about is yourself generally, because you know that story. But you mentioned I got a scholarship to Louisville, and I truly did get a scholarship. I got one scholarship to the University of Louisville. Went down there. I was a backup tight end on our high school team as a junior. I put on a bunch of weight for my senior season. Ended up getting a scholarship to Louisville. I kind of went in the offense in the line of scrimmage. So I went from tight end on the outside to tackle, and then ended up my redshirt freshman year starting as center for Louisville. Played 49 straight games there. Played for a guy named Bobby Petrino for the first 3 years. Learned a lot of lessons from him. His name's been tarnished a little bit. A lot of it he brought on himself, but just learned a tremendous amount about being a man, and you're either getting better or getting worse every single day. I say being a man, maybe not modeling what, dad and husband, whatever that may be. And he did that as well at times. I don't want to undermine that part of him. Just, I know people on the outside listening would say, well, is that the same guy we saw in Atlanta and Arkansas? But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of guys nowadays. There's a lot of college-age kids nowadays that could use some Bobby Petrino tough love to kind of take you to that next level, whether that's your next level in sport, business, just the daily demand and grind. I don't often honor him on podcast, and for some reason, it just hit my brain today to kind of give him some encouragement through my words there. But learned a lot from him. Ended up being a first-round draft pick to the Buffalo Bills in 2009, and just truly a dream come true there, and get to play for your beloved Bills. And
right.
When I went to the Bills, they were 8 years into a playoff drought. I would play there for 9 more years of that playoff drought, which at the time was the longest in professional sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you got one scholarship offer from Louisville. And from there, like you said, you moved inside the line and then got drafted, first round. You were the mid first round pick, late first round pick, I think, for the Bills, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. How do you go from, barely getting a college offer and then, the movement that you made to a first round pick in a short period of time? What are some of the things that you did? Was it goal setting, visualization? What are some things you did to kind of do that?
I think I did some of that stuff naturally, but I'll tell you what a few turning points for me was. So, I'm a man of faith, and I'm not going to shy away from the fact that there was opportunities that were put in front of me by the grace of God, I'm assuming. I played at a high school where a lot of guys were getting recruited and getting college scholarships. So there was college coaches around. If there was no other guys on my high school team getting recruited, I would have never got recruited. They would have never noticed me. There would be no reason to come to the west side of Cincinnati to Elder High School if there wasn't other really good ball players. So I was fortunate of that. And I was fortunate of so many deals. I went into an offensive line amongst 4 guys. So My first year starting at Louisville, my left guard and left tackle, my right guard and right tackle all played in the NFL at least for a short stint, some of them for a long career. That's lucky. That's a great opportunity. That's for me to be surrounded by people. I think I had great mentors. I learned from a lot of guys that I played with. I learned from a lot of incredible coaches. There was a lot of hard work along the way. And I think by continuously pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you create habits of being able to push yourself to the limits that pay off all throughout life. But you talk about goal setting. And for me, my goal coming into college, and I don't talk about this often on podcasts and whatnot, but my goal coming into college was to make the Bengals. I'm originally from Cincinnati. If I could make the Bengals practice squad one day, me and my high school buddies would joke how special that would be. At the time, that paid $90,000. I thought, well, shoot, I can work in the off season. I can make over $100,000. And I'm on the Tribe of Millionaires podcast, and you wouldn't have invited me if you didn't assume I took care of my money enough to still be a millionaire. So that was my goal entering college. Well, I made the freshman All-American team. And when you make the freshman All-American team, they send you a letter, and I still have it framed, and it's 70% of freshman All-Americans end up getting drafted, X amount of percent become second-round draft picks, first-round draft picks, whatever it may be. My goals instantly shifted, and that's where the power of words and the power of encouragement, you never know what it's going to do for someone. On my podcast, I've had actors on, musicians, professional athletes. And one common theme is there's generally, especially if you poke and prod around enough, there's generally one moment where there was words of encouragement that led to bigger goals, bigger dreams. So for all you business owners out there, for all you CEOs, anyone in a leadership position, and really, I'm assuming anyone in listening to this podcast is in some type of leadership position, even if it's just leading your family, male or female, you are a leader. Never underestimate what words of encouragement, words of affirmation can do for somebody. And when I got those words from the All-American Committee, that shifted my goals. I instantly shifted my goals to say, I will do everything in my power to be a first-round draft pick. And I became obsessed with it. And when I go and talk to college-age kids nowadays, I say, look, there are so many there's so many college athletes out there. Less than 1% will sign an NFL contract. You have to truly be obsessed with playing in the NFL and staying in the NFL to get there. It doesn't happen by chance. It's for someone's athletic ability, for someone's skill to truly outweigh their work habits. I mean, it takes a rare case that ever happens. And when you look around the NFL, it's not, and you look at all the lockers, it's not Texas, Alabama, Ohio State, man, it's Eastern Washington, it's University of Louisville, it's Eastern Carolina, and there's some blue chip prospects in there as well. But these are all guys that were obsessed with it and would not be denied it. So, I think my goals did shift, Jamie, and then I became obsessed with it to where all my actions, all my work were pointing in the direction of what I ultimately wanted to become. And, I often talk to people about creating a vision. Well, without me knowing, what all these personal development experts would be saying, just kind of ingrained in me was throughout this process of being obsessed with becoming a first-round draft pick, I hung a picture in my locker. It was a cutout from a magazine, and it was basically what a NFL prototype center would look like, some tangibles and intangibles. Well, I was literally giving myself a vision daily of what I wanted to become. And it's amazing, Jamie, how many of those at the combine I was so close to. Like, it was the prototype center was 6'4", 310, according to this paper. Based upon my combine measurements, I was 6'4" and exactly 310 pounds. Wow. It was, at least 30 reps on the bench of 225 pounds. I did exactly 30. It's amazing how many of those lined up perfectly. So that was a great question. I hope that wasn't too long of an answer. But no. A lot of the principles that I teach and coach now and try and pour into others, I did naturally. I kind of did by accident. But a lot of that's just being surrounded by great mentors and coaches.
Obsessed is an interesting word. You used that a few times. And I heard an episode that you did on your podcast where this discussion about being obsessed, I forget what one it was, might have been a recent one actually. Can you talk about that? What does that mean, obsessed? Because to me, in my mind, I could see that word being synonymous with sacrifice. Like, what do you need to give up in order to be obsessed with something? What are you going to put down? Being a husband, being a father, a mother, or whatever it might be. What does obsessed mean? Can you quantify that, or can you give a little bit more granularity on that to the extent that you're willing or able to?
Yeah, and I would say obsessed has probably got a bad connotation, and that's okay. It's
Yeah, yeah,
okay that is, because the people that would shy away from using the word obsessed are probably people that I wouldn't get along with super well. I feel like I can get along with anybody. Those are probably people I wouldn't want to necessarily align myself with, because I'm always trying to constantly surround myself with people that will push me to that next level in life. And that's a competitiveness in me. That's probably a pride issue and an ego issue, if I'm honest and
sure.
vulnerable right now, that a lot of us have and probably don't recognize. But to your point on obsessed, I think there's a difference between being interested in something or
Mm,
obsessed, or another word, maybe committed. Like, how committed are you to something? And oftentimes when you peel back the covers, when someone says they want something, their actions don't line up with it. So someone that's obsessed with something will make sacrifice. They will be extremely disciplined in trying to get to that goal or whatever their vision would be. If you looked at their time allotment through the week, then it would reflect what they say they want to get done. And you know what? Yes, I was obsessed with being a first round draft pick, but I was a college age kid. Nowadays there's things that I am completely committed to. And it starts with my faith. It's my immediate family. It's my friends. It's my career now. Like, those things I will sacrifice for. But at the time when I was in college, like, everything was wrapped around football. Now it's a little more like I make the biggest effort I can to structure into my week moments and schedule moments, so I'm not scheduling out my faith, my family, and things that I hold dearly to me. So for those listening and say, okay, well, I'm going to go all in on something, I encourage everyone to write down your core values, or even just what you value most in this world. And for some people, it might be money. And in this time and place, you may be someone who's single, whatever it may be. Just understand what you value most, and just don't go somewhere. Don't go somewhere on autopilot. Just don't go somewhere on accident without truly knowing, creating a vision for yourself that's values based. So, I mentioned mine. Like, for mine, it's it's faith, it's family, it's friends. I value relationships, and then it's career and hobbies and everything else.
Yep, the three F's. I like that. I like that. So you achieved the goal, obviously. First round draft pick. I love this. I love this topic because, like, here's the example for me, right? So I had this goal of becoming an executive within this insurance company. I worked there for 20 years before I exited, and I did it. That's what moved me to Michigan. We were talking about that before, like being in Boston during the worst day of the Bills days, and then moving here to Michigan. It brought me here, and then I immediately felt this lack of fulfillment. And that's really what started me down the path of, real estate investing and being intentional like you are with proximity, finding a community like GoBundance and all of that stuff. And it really propelled me forward to where now I feel much more grounded in what I want and grounded in what I'm trying to do. You achieved the goal. You got the first round pick, right? But then after that, I mean, look, I remember early in your career, broken leg, broken. I mean, you had a lot of injury plagued years. It's easy for you to mentally check out, maybe give up or whatever, but you stuck through it. I think 2015 was a Pro Bowl year, if I'm not mistaken. Talk about that for a moment. Like, a lot of people achieve what they think is the dream and then immediately realize, like, that's not giving them happiness, or that's not what they thought it would be. Like, be careful what you wish for to some extent. But you continue to drive forward. And I would bet, and we'll talk about the end of your playing career, had it not been for, the injury or what you learned at the end of your playing career, you might be playing right now for all we know. So how did you continue after you achieved this obsession that you had with being a first round pick? How did you continue forward? Is it about these values and making sure it's rooted in that? Is that really what it's about? Or did you have to restate your goals? Like, how do you continue to go after you achieve a huge, huge goal that you set out for yourself?
Yeah, I think for most people it's just never finish, and then it's move on to the next thing. Okay, what's
Yeah.
what's that next level of achievement? And that can be such a slippery slope in life if you put all of your if you put all your self-worth into what your next achievement's going to be. It's a never-ending path. I became a first-round draft pick. Okay, now I got to be a starter. Okay, I'm starting in the NFL. Okay, then I got to get that second contract, because then financially I should be set for life. And then it's okay, I got to make a Pro Bowl. I want to win a Super Bowl. I want to win the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And it's all these things, and then it's constant. And if all your self-worth is in achievement, it's great to chase success in life. Like I would never pull someone back from that, and staying committed to something, and in that process of trying to achieve that. If you're constantly growing, Tony Robbins says fulfillment comes from growth. Like personal growth is where fulfillment comes. It doesn't come from the pinnacle, because that moment is so fleeting. The growth is every single day. And so for me, and I'll be honest, for a majority of my career, I didn't truly appreciate the moment. It took a while into my career before I started doing what I called my gratitude drives to the stadium in the morning. We lived about 3 minutes from the stadium. When I pulled out of my driveway, I could see the stadium lights. It was generally dark when I was driving in the morning. I could see the stadium lights, and I would start to think to myself, how awesome is it that I get to play in the NFL? I'm a kid from the west side of Cincinnati. I didn't even start on my high school team as a junior in high school. Like, I'm playing in the NFL. I'm a captain of an NFL team. I've got to play my whole career in the same city. And I would just flood myself with gratitude going in. And then I truly started to appreciate the moment and appreciate where I was at in my career, because for a lot of my career, it was constantly, okay, well, I haven't achieved this yet. Well, I haven't achieved this. Well, what if you get hurt and you can't achieve that? And eventually I would get to that moment, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but eventually I get to that moment where I finally get hurt for the last time, and I'm not going to be able to achieve that. I'm not going to be able to achieve some of my greatest goals. And you mentioned, you should still be playing potentially. And in my mind, I would have played till the wheels truly fell off. I loved it. I had a conversation with Brandon being the GM for the Bills a week or two ago about how they extended me with the Buffalo Bills to be the mentor, the center for whatever quarterback they're going to draft, who is now Josh Allen.
That's true. That's amazing, huh? Isn't that crazy when you think about it? And he's killing it right now. He's just an unbelievable find. Thankfully, like last year, came out of whatever it was the first 2 years were, and really developed an incredible development. I want to talk about the end of your career, 2017, in a moment. But one thing you mentioned with Brandon Beane, this culture in Buffalo, and I think this speaks to sports, and we always have these great parallels of sports in life and sports and career, sports and corporate, all that stuff. But you, for years, were with a franchise that just seemed like it couldn't get out of its way, with an organization, a culture that couldn't get out of its way. I mean, speaking of living in Boston, I remember a Monday night game. I think this was when you were there. I think it was Leotis McKelvin. Bills were up. They were going to upset the Patriots, and on the like the last kickoff of the game, this terrible fumble, and they just found a way to lose. And it felt like that was the culture of the team. I'm in Michigan. You hear this about the Lions right now, right? Like some of these teams go through this. In your last year, you made the playoffs, and you had, I think it was the first year for this new regime, this new culture. Can you contrast and compare what you saw for the prior 7 or 8 years of your career, that culture? What was it about it that just didn't allow you to get out of your way, versus what you saw in 2017? And now, you get to see it being the color man for the radio, for the Bills radio network. What's that difference? What makes for a winning culture versus that can't get out of your way culture from what you've seen?
Yeah, there's so many different cultures that you could set up, and it's generally instilled by the head coach. And there's so many different cultures you could kind of, tag words or whatever it may be. And everyone tried to implement it. But I played for 7 head coaches in 9 years. 2 were interims, but 7 head coaches in 9 years. So how do you establish a culture if it's constantly changing? You have a new leader, and Rex Ryan is empowerment and freedom, and I'm going to treat you like a man. I'm going to treat you like a pro. Go show up on Sundays. And then prior to that, you have a Doug Marrone who came from the college ranks prior, and he's going to put his thumb on you, and it's intimidation. It's a little bit of fear and fear of making mistakes. And then prior to that, it's Chan Gailey, and it's kind of similar to him and Dick Drawn were fairly similar in, hey, we're gonna have great X's and O's. We're gonna have great leadership within the team. But if you need a motivational speech from me as a pro, then you're in the wrong business. Like, you should be ingrained in that. And all those coaches I appreciate. But when Sean McDermott came in, Sean McDermott said, these are the types of guys that we are going to coach. If you're not one of our guys, you are gone. They traded away. Everyone thought we were tanking. I'm sure you did as well. Yeah. We traded away our previous 3 top draft picks when they came in, which is insane to do. But he said they're not our type of DNA. And I looked at Sean one time and I said, well, then I guess talent isn't in your DNA, because these are 3 of the most talented guys on our team. Yeah. But that's the team that breaks the playoff drought. And it was because we brought in guys that were going to, fight till the end, the guys that were reliable on a day-to-day basis that you could count on each and every week to know the playbooks and show up every Sunday. And those are the guys that set the foundation, and now they are super talented, and now they're AFC Championship. And now, even after dropping a couple crappy games this year, they're still the Vegas betting favorite to win the Super Bowl. So that being said, one thing the Bills also struggle with, and this kind of relates to business as well, is for the first 6 or 7 years of my career, we had an owner that was so sick that he often couldn't leave Detroit and couldn't even come visit the facility. And so when the owner's not there, when the top dog's not there, that guy that signs your check, when he's not in the building, there's not as much accountability all the way from the top down.
That's interesting.
Well, Terry Pagula and Kim Pagula, they are there all the time. They're very intentional. They ask the players, what can we do to make this a better experience for you in Buffalo? What do you need to be able to succeed? Well, you appreciate people like that more. You also, when they're at practice, maybe you just go a little bit harder. When they're standing on the sidelines before the games, maybe your warm-up's a touch better, because at any moment in the NFL, you could be kicked to the curb unless you're one of those rare, maybe 3 to 5 guys on the team that are worth more cut than you are on the team, because they'll have to give you a big old check to walk out the door. Most players in the NFL are not like that. So all that being said, for all those business leaders out there, when you own your own business, be present within your organization, because just your presence being there is extremely powerful.
I love some of the terms that are coming. You're talking about proximity, accountability, gratitude. I just had a guy on yesterday, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's an author, wrote a book called Who Not How, and more recently, The Gap and the Gain. And it's based on Dan Sullivan teachings. And what you talked about when you were leaving your house 3 minutes away from the stadium, being, thankful for the fact that you're there. You're not focused in the gap where you are now to where you want to be. You're focused in the gain, where you've come from to where you are now. And that's just, it completely converts your mindset. It completely converts everything. It makes you happier. And when you're happier, you're going to do great things. So I love the lessons that you've gotten from your playing days. And I want to go to now the end of your playing days. So 2017, if you want to just sort of talk about, because I don't remember, as a fan, I don't remember there being like a moment where you were injured, but then suddenly there was the news that you couldn't play anymore. So can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, there was no moment that I was just injured, and because I was the only player on the team to play every single snap that season, one of the only players in the entire NFL to play every single snap that season.
Hard.
And It is hard, because you could be removed from a game without being injured. Your shoe could fall off.
Be up in a game, down in a game.
Yeah, right? Exactly. You're winning by too much, losing by too much. There's just so many reasons. A chin strap could break on your helmet. Like, there's so many reasons that you could leave a football game without being, even if you're injured, and the injury rate in the NFL is 100%. Some injuries are just a little worse than others, and you have to miss some time. That being said, I was the only player on the team that played 100% of the snaps in 2017. We make the playoffs, so we break the longest playoff drought in all of professional sports, which I'll never win a Super Bowl as a player, but that sure felt like winning a Super Bowl. To get that monkey off our back was truly special. I signed a contract extension before the season. When everyone thought the Bills were tanking, I put my faith and trust in Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and said, you know what, guys, I'm with you guys. I could never leave and see you guys have success without me, so I'll just stay, and I'll help you guys get over the hump any way I can. And so that was truly a special season. We get over the hump. We end up losing in Jacksonville, and I'm as competitive as it gets. But that was for the first time in my life, I went into a football game and I could almost acknowledge that it was a win-win, whether we won or lost. And the only reason I say that is, and I was fighting to win, and I truly wanted to win. And when you hear the story, my wife wanted us to win too. But my son was going to be born 2 days after that game. If the Bills won, I was likely going to miss the birth of my son. If the Bills lost, I would be there for the birth of his son. We ended up losing in Jacksonville. Everyone's got to take an exit physical. I go into my exit physical. I said, hey, look, I'm the only player on the team that played every single snap. Let me go for the offseason. Just clear me for the Pro Bowl. I'll be on my way. And they said, Eric, you had some stingers this year. Get an MRI on your neck. I said, my high school buddies got stingers. And for those unfamiliar out there, you take a shot to the head or neck area. It messes with the nerves. You get some numbness in your hand, and it can be, some are worse than others. It can last anywhere from a couple seconds to maybe 10 seconds, but the feeling comes back because it's truly just a nerve deal. And then the feeling comes back and you proceed as usual. You know, oftentimes you're not even sore from it. Well, they said you had a bunch of stingers this year. Go get an MRI on your neck. Apprehensively, I got the MRI on my neck just because I thought this is a waste of time. But I get an MRI on my neck, drive back to Louisville. 2 days later, I'm in the hospital room. We're in the delivery room waiting on my son to be born. I get a call from the doctor in Buffalo, and that moment would be the end of my career. He would inform me that at C2, C3, there was disc and bone sitting into my spinal cord, and they're not sure why. I wasn't like Ryan Shazier, who was laying on the field motionless that year and still trying to gain back motor function to this day. They're not sure why that didn't happen. They said, you're extremely lucky, but you will never play football again. You'll never pass a physical, even if you try with another organization, and consider yourself lucky that it wasn't worse. And so in that moment, just wrecked us. I mean, my wife started crying, and nurse comes in and she said, honey, it's not going to hurt that bad. And she said, it's not about the baby. And we still laugh to this day about that, I guess. Sure. Maybe I laugh more than she does. But it put us kind of on a roller coaster ride. Like I said, I had just signed a contract extension before the season. We owned a house in Buffalo. Like half the year my wife was up there, probably 8 months a year I was up there. And that was a big part of our life and something I wasn't ready to let go of.
What's going on, everybody? It's Jamie. I'm jumping in real quick here because some people are listening to this podcast thinking, man, I hear this guest. I hear what they're talking about. This whole GoBundance thing sounds pretty cool. I'd love to be a part of that. And I would say to you, if you are qualified to be part of GoBundance, you're a millionaire or accredited at the very least, jump onto GoBundance.com and just put your application in. You'll get on a call. It might even be with me where we can talk about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and what it is to be part of this community in depth. Would love to have a conversation with you about that. It's been just so life-changing for me. And for those of you out there that are saying, yeah, sounds great, I would if I were a millionaire or if I were accredited, but I'm not there yet. We've got that now. We've built a program and I run it. I love being a part of it. I left my job for it, called Emerge and Ascend. Emerge is where you got to start. It's a 12-week intensive sprint goal-setting course. You're going to get curriculum every week. You're going to get live intervention every week. You're going to get connection with GoBundance members every week. You're going to get accountability from like-minded people every week. Jump into that, kill it, and we invite you to Ascend, which is essentially the GoBundance Mastermind without the $1 million requirement. And we actually even add in coaching to help folks find their purpose, their mission, their values. It's intense. It's everything all wrapped in one. So again, if you're a millionaire or you're at least accredited and you're wondering about this GoBundance thing and that shouldn't I, just apply. Throw your name in. You lose nothing. All you do is put your name into an application form, you get on a phone call, and then you decide. If you're not yet at that $1 million mark, look at Emerge, GoBundance.com/emerge. And what you can do as well is drop my name in there, Jamie, Jamie, and we'll knock $200 off the tuition for Emerge. Jump in there and we'll get you started on your journey toward being a whole life millionaire, toward getting to GoBundance, whatever you want. People in Emerge, people in Ascend, people in GoBundance all report back often the changes it's made in their lives financially, relationally, and everywhere else. So go to GoBundance.com, check all of that out. See wherever you are, dive into that particular area of GoBundance, and we'd love to see you inside of the tribe. Now, back to our show. Yeah, that's I've heard that part, that it was, in the delivery room. Essentially, you're getting this news, and I can't imagine in that moment the emotions of like, oh my God, amazing, but oh my God, what the hell just happened to me? Right? Like what
Yeah, 50 minutes later, my son was born. And so
wow.
I find out my dream career is over. And then 50 minutes later, my son is born. He's healthy. He's this beautiful little baby boy. He was our second. Our daughter Grace is 3 years older than him. And, I come from a family with my little brother had severe cerebral palsy, passed when he was 11 years old. Even just having this healthy baby that we get to hold, like I truly appreciated that. And it takes everything away for the moment, but eventually life settles back in and you realize, shoot, I need to tell everybody about this, and it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. And I need to figure out what the heck I'm going to do next.
Yeah, it's a great segue because I mean that's life happens for you, as you know, right? That's a key principle, and what you're doing now is really exciting. One quick question as an aside: how I don't know how fragile is this for you? Like if you bump into something, could it be game over? Like I'm just kind of curious, not being funny, but honestly, like how fragile is this? Because it was like you said, you could easily have been paralyzed. Do you have to watch what you do on a day-to-day basis?
That's a great question and something I asked myself. I'm like, well, if this is so dangerous, can I never play basketball again? Can
Right.
I still play golf? Can I do water sports on the lake, which I love to do? And there's some restrictions. Like I'm not supposed to wakeboard. That's pretty intense. I
Yeah.
shouldn't jump off of cliffs into the water and stuff, any like high impact. But every 6 months I get an MRI on my neck and the disc is starting to pull off of the cord. They're monitoring it pretty closely because, not to get too in the weeds on this, and maybe there's some out there listening, message me on Instagram if you know more about this than I do. I'm at Ewood70, but there's callousing and there's bruising. The spinal cord and bone were the disc and bone were into the spinal cord. Because I didn't have permanent strength loss and numbness. They're assuming it was bruising and not callousing. It can turn to callousing. If it does, they need to do surgery immediately. The disc and bone are starting to pull off. And so, knock on wood, yeah. I'm okay to just live normal life. The worst thing that could happen is me to take a huge shot at the head I wasn't braced for. So they said, like almost the most dangerous thing would maybe be driving in the snow where you get rear-ended and not expect it. But it's not like I have to walk around on pins and needles all my life. Football is probably just the most violent sport you could possibly play, and you're taking enormous shots to the head and neck area.
Yeah, no doubt. I was going to say you had a pretty, and you were a brawler, man. Like you weren't the kind of guy that was technique only. Like you, I think, took pride in like mauling people. If I remember right,
that's what makes it fun to play offensive line. Like we don't score touchdowns. Physically dominating someone is half the battle. And I've lost a lot of weight since I've been done playing, but I still work out and try and look good because I tell my wife all the time. I said, I may not be able to fight anybody ever again, but I at least need to look like I can kick someone's tail in case Grace walks home with a boyfriend that's kind of big. Like I need to be in good shape. And this is funny. I don't think I've told this on any podcast, so you're in for a treat for this one. So
there we go.
You like even before COVID, you weren't supposed to walk your kids into kindergarten at my daughter's school, like because if everybody did it, it would be way too hectic. They don't have parking for everybody. But I would always do it. And I was broadcasting for ESPN and the Bills that year. So I was gone 4.5 days a week. So I'm like, you know what? The day I get to take her to school, I'm going to walk her in there. And when I give her a kiss at her door, and I'd be nice to everyone going in there. And a lot of people are Louisville fans, so they recognize me. And I try to be as sweet as I can so they don't kick me out. But I'd say, Grace, I love you, girl. Spread joy today. We do our thing. And I'd say, and why does daddy walk you to your class? And she said, so everyone in here knows I have the biggest, baddest daddy in school. And I said, and don't you ever forget it, baby. And I'm like, because like I don't have any sisters, and I don't really have any I'm like, the one thing I'd always been told is like you want your daughter to be confident and secure, like obviously know her dad loves her mom, but like and feel protected. And so I'm like, all right, well that's the only way I really know how.
That's fun, man. I don't know. I'm glad they're healthy. I have 2 boys, and I'm thank God I do. First of all, I'm 5'7", 160. So yeah, you can still take me. Bad neck and all. Although I know where to hit you now. At least I can go right for the neck if I get into a brawl with you. But having 2 boys, like I have 2 sisters. The pressure my parents had, it felt like they had of with girls and everything. My dad, Thankfully, I don't have that pressure because girls, one, are way too smart at a young age. They pick up on stuff and they think about what you say. Whereas if I tell my boys like just run into the wall, they'll just do it. They don't really think
Right.
about anything. I love that about them.
And the funny thing is we probably don't put enough pressure on ourselves to raise our voice correctly. You know what I mean? And because you're like, well, I want them to figure it out themselves and they need to be tough. And it's like, man, we live in this culture now. It's like almost we should be like, hey, it's cool to show emotion. Like it's okay to cry. We get these like, what they say, like everyone's got daddy issues. You either had a great dad that you feel like you could never live up to, or you had a piece of crap dad that you feel like you have to outprove, or you have to do better than. It's like all of us have daddy issues.
100%. And my wife is the balance there because to your point, I mean, my upbringing, I know was different than my sister's just because my parents saw roles differently in that time, right? Like at the time, you're girls, you're going to be a wife and a mother one day. You're a man, you have to go out and earn, right? So we were treated differently. We just were not in a, what's the word I'm looking for? A derogatory way, I guess, but it was just the times, 80s, 90s, whatever, the upbringing.
Which is probably what led you to a lot of success. But then you mentioned when you moved to Detroit, or when you moved to Michigan, you felt that lack of fulfillment. It's like eventually, like we're men, we're earners, we provide, we protect. But then it's like ultimately we need to take a look within and be like, okay, what truly fulfills me? Like, where am I going to make an impact on this world? And that's where I admire you doing this podcast and spreading, positive vibes around. It's like, okay, I'm going to make an impact here beyond just the fact that I can provide for my family.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, but you're absolutely right. That is exactly it. Head down, provide. And at some point you're just like, this doesn't feel good anymore. Like there's things I want to do that fulfill me and that I feel are on purpose for me and that I can leverage my gifts with. And with that, I want to, go ahead.
I was going to say, and you can only teach or lead from a point of experience. And the only reason I say that is because on a day-to-day basis, I find myself like, okay, well, I'm going to out earn, what I did playing. And it's like, my family does not care how much money we have or how much money I make. Like they more want time and presence.
That's it. Quality time, no doubt. And with that, I want to talk about this transition. So your career's over. Obviously now you've launched a media career, right? So, and I think you have aspirations of the Monday Night Football booth. I've heard you say that in a couple of different things doing the research here. So correct me if that's wrong, but let's start with fulfillment and purpose and passion and some of these words. Like, you started doing the work prior to your transition out of your NFL career. Can you talk a little bit about that? Let's start there. I got like 4 questions in my brain. Let me just give you one question. Let's start with, what was the work you were doing prior to leaving the NFL? Even though maybe you didn't know you were going to be leaving the NFL at the time you did, but you started doing some things. What were you working on?
So prior to my last season in the NFL, I was the accountability partner for somebody on our team that had an executive coach, a mindset coach, however you want to say it. I was his accountability partner. And through my conversations with this guy, James McPartland, I ended up working with him as well because I thought, man, this stuff is gold and stuff I've never been exposed to. And it was kind of just extra accountability in my life, but it was leadership practices. It was figuring out exactly how I'm using my time each week. And maybe I'm saying I'm bogged down. Okay, well, let's find the wasted pockets of time and all that. And let's do values exercises and truly hone in on all these things. Well, then my career ends and I have this built-in kind of transition coach now who's worked with a lot of executive CEOs that have transitioned out of business, other professional athletes. And so I was so fortunate and lucky. If you spend enough time around me, you'll always hear me say, I was so lucky. I'm the luckiest guy ever. And I could give you 20 different examples. And after that, you'd probably say like, man, you are really lucky. But, and then I always say, and then if someone uses that against me, it's cool if I say it. If someone said it was me, then I would say, well,
I worked for this.
Luck is preparation meets opportunity, so you can run both ways with that. But so lucky and so fortunate to have my work with Mac. And then as I transitioned out for the first time in so long, I had this period of obscurity from when I found out about the injury until the Bills finally released me, which was a lot of salary cap complications.
Complications. Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah. Like salary cap implications. I'll say if they were to cut me prior, to right before the deadline, then they wouldn't have been able to pick up the free agents because the cap hit would have kicked in immediately and it just wasn't going to work out. Anyways, I could never say I was retiring. I couldn't even like really show I was losing weight because then maybe I'm retiring. If I'm retiring, I don't get my injury money. And so it was this time where I didn't even want people to like take a picture of me because I was trying to lose the weight because I wanted to be healthy and make my body feel good. But I didn't want people to even anyone to see a picture of me because then I'm like, well, they could use that against me. And it was a tough period, honestly.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah. And then, I had a schedule every single day that was built for me. And I had this mission and purpose to be the best center in the NFL. And yes, I want to be a rock star Christian and dad and husband, but career-wise, I knew exactly what I wanted to be every single day, whether it was in season, off season. I knew exactly what it took. And a lot of times the schedules were built for me. Well, now I have no schedule. I don't know what I want to be. Yes, I want to be a dad and husband and a Christian, and I devoted a lot of time to that. But ultimately, men need something to pour into, something that they're passionate about. And that's what I tell a lot of people in transition nowadays is find something you're passionate about. It doesn't necessarily have to bring monetary value, especially not at first. If you create value for other people, especially if you create value for valuable people, you will be rewarded financially. But don't let that be the driving force, especially if you're transitioning from a place of, as a former professional athlete, or maybe the people listening to this and the Tribe of Millionaires, like, don't let money be the thing that says that's what your passion is. Find your passion and then find out how to monetize it. But man, you have to do some deep soul searching in those moments when it's ripped from you, like it was me. Because I always said, and hopefully this speaks to someone on this podcast, but I always said, if you were too worried about what you were going to do after football, it would come a lot sooner for you. So for you out there that are saying like, I can't wait to retire, we're going to move to Florida or California, we're going to do these travel plans, and you're too worried about that, and you're too worried about what am I going to do next, you're probably not living in the moment enough to maximize your potential here, and you're going to leave something on the table. All that being said, I was extremely lucky to work with Mac through all this, and for him to be able to pour into me through this tough time, that because I would have never known how to navigate it myself, because obviously I had never been through anything like that.
That's a lot of gold in there, man. I love the discussion of passion. Always intrigues me and interests me. I'm very careful about that word recently. Like in the last couple of months, I've become very careful, and really just the power of words generally, right? We're linguistic beings, so how words matter, and passion. If you look it up, I don't know if you ever looked up the definition of passion, but it is an unsustainable emotion. That's what passion is, right? So I think when I think of passions, I've got a boulevard of broken dreams of passions that last a weekend of me being into origami or whatever, all the way through months of some level of real estate investing or something that I thought I wanted to do in real estate investing. And it's like, why don't these things stick? Why do I kind of fall off of them? And what you've talked about is the core values, purpose, all of that. I believe you have to know what that is, what your gifts are, what you're truly gifted with. And from that derive your passions. You have to have a foundation, like coming from something, not just, I want to do this today and then this over here, and oh, I love this so much. Passions will fade. The definition of the word is that they will, right? It's an emotion, like any emotion. We're never happy forever or sad forever, right? So I love what you talk about with core values and purpose and everything else like that. With the transition over now to the media company, early on you set a goal to be a practice squad player for the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And obviously that goal changed, as you talked about, once you kind of got more enlightenment with that. Leaving the NFL, once you kind of got over the shock of that and figured, okay, what is next for me? And I know that's your whole podcast is dedicated to what's next, right? Did how you set the goal, or did anything change from then to now? Like, how did you determine that this was it for you? Like, what was behind that?
Okay, so for me, perfect what you just said about identifying your gifts. So for me, in identifying my gifts, and it's oftentimes hard to even identify your own gifts. Sometimes you have to ask others. And this was a lot of soul searching within myself, but then also me asking others. And because so for instance, one of my gifts is communication. Well, it's hard for you to recognize that you have that gift, especially if you're a former pro athlete, if you're a pastor, if you're a public speaker, if you're a congressman, like you speak in public enough that you know you're good at it. I hadn't spoken in public enough. I had done enough media appearances and enough interviews that people said, hey, if you ever want to get into this, you're a gifted communicator. Okay, light bulb on. What else are my gifts? Well, I'm extremely disciplined. I have this football knowledge. Okay, let's try broadcasting, because if I let that window close as an offensive lineman from Western New York playing in Buffalo, if this window closes in 3 years, they're going to say, wait, who the heck were you again? And so I hopped into broadcasting. And if you've heard me say, maybe one day I'll be maybe I'll be an analyst on Monday Night Football. Like, I don't know that that's my top goal right now, because as I get more and more into media, podcasting, broadcasting, like I want to make a positive impact on people. I want to positively influence others. And I don't know, by going all in on that, that's my biggest way of impacting. I think podcasting, I think speaking, writing, those types of things, you can make a big impact on others. I still really enjoy calling football games, so I still call the Bills games. But for me, when I was at ESPN doing college games plus doing the Bills games, I mentioned I was gone 4.5 days a week. And the way I'm wired, Jamie, I don't go halfway in on anything. And so I committed to 2 years of that. And because I said I want to get double the reps, and I want to do college and NFL. I want to figure out what I like better. I'm going to do TV and radio. And this way I'm getting a bunch of experience and I can kind of figure it out. For now, I'm just doing the radio gig with the Bills. And then I'm doing some performance coaching over at U of L. So through my podcast of finding out what's next for me, I got introduced to all these people in the self-development space, these coaches, these speakers, these authors, these
influencers, podcasters.
Exactly. Yeah. These performance coaches, for lack of better words, mindset coaches, get introduced to all of them. I thought, man, that would be really fulfilling if I could do it. And they were like, what do you mean if you can do it? You were a captain in the NFL for multiple years. You've done hundreds of hours of reading and speaking with some of the top minds in this space. Just go do it. So I've been doing that over at U of L. And so it's kind of ever evolving around the central theme of how do I positively influence others using the gifts and platform God has given me personally. But it has to start with Leslie, Grace, and Garrett in my household, because if it doesn't start with them, it doesn't matter what else I'm doing, because if I'm neglecting them to chase all these shiny objects, then ultimately I'm not going to have the structure I need, and it's all going to crumble.
That's so insightful, man. I struggle with that, being honest and vulnerable, like leaving my day job, which I've been conditioned to be for so long, and then taking, an entrepreneurial path and, finding purpose, and to your point, adding value in this way. I love doing this. I have a great time meeting people and, hopefully asking questions that people resonate with. But I'll be honest with you, I really don't care. These are questions I want to know. I'm just my own curiosity. I get to explore with a guy who's performed at such a high level.
And that's how I am too. I always feel like if I'm asking questions that I'm learning from, somebody out there's learning and finding value from it too. And just quickly to expand on that point for 1 second, when my career ended, one of the hardest moments for me was telling people I didn't know what I was going to be doing next, and them saying, well, you're too young to be retired, Eric. And I'd say, I know I'm not retired. I just got my career taken from me. I'll figure it out, and I would literally take offense to that. And I shouldn't have. It came from a place of caring with many individuals, but it still irked me and it hurt me. And that's when I kind of realized that maybe more of my identity was wrapped into football and being a football player than I truly realized. Well, then I got really excited when I could start telling people, well, now I have 2 broadcast gigs. I'm on 3 different boards. I still have my foundation in Buffalo. I have a podcast. I have this. And I was talking to a guy named Greg Taylor, and Greg told me, he said, Eric, I just want to let you know, and this comes from a place of experience, you didn't mention your family one time, and if you leave them behind, it's really not going to work out. You're going to crash and burn, bud. And it was exactly what I needed to hear. I was so proud of myself and so excited that I could finally tell people I'm not doing just one thing. I have 10 things going. And that's where I had to start learning the power of saying no, because you're going to get a lot of great opportunities. We're all going to get good opportunities. Most listening to this podcast probably get multiple, probably more than I do. And I need to learn, and I am learning the power of saying no.
Dude, that hits me right now. Just before this podcast, I was on with my accountability partner. He's a guy out of Canada. And we were chatting about this. And I said, dude, I'm in too many things right now. I'm stretched too much. And to the point of your kids and your family, What's compelling to me, like especially when I left my job, I have a 6 and 3 year old now, was man, I want these guys to have, more opportunity than I had. I want them to be able to live a life that they dream of living. Like I didn't figure this stuff out until like mid late 30s. Then I started learning about personal development, the power of your brain, and all of this stuff, visualization and goal setting and habits and routines and things that I guess you kind of fumble into at times and don't realize you're doing, and that's why your life's going so well. Now I have some intentionality around it. So we've literally enrolled our oldest in a school that pretty much teaches that. So he doesn't go to traditional school. We didn't like what traditional school offered. We've sent him to what's called an Acton Academy. Talked about it on this podcast before, they talk about the first day I brought him in. The topic was for 6 year olds. Let's talk about growth versus fixed mindset, and
Wow.
they had to define that, right. And then as you go along, the daily topics or discussions are accountability and failure and things that I want them to have. So I feel like, man, I've done this for my kids, but then to your point, my actions, me, like, okay, I've done that. I've checked the box. What I'm doing is spreading myself so thin over all these exciting opportunities that I feel give my ego the boost that I need. And I neglect them at the end of the day. And that's the thing I'm on this roller coaster with, especially as I'm in this what's next period and trying to figure out. So, man, what you said in there, that hit me right in the chest, what you just described. I got these 10 things. Look at me. Yeah, go for it.
I know. And I actually listened to a sermon last night, and honestly, a lot of this is coming out because it's something I'm, dealing with and managing right now. And I think you hit it on the head. It's just being intentional. Like when you're intentional and you're present, then you can understand in the moment. You don't go on autopilot for 5 years and then lose your family and have no relationship with your wife and kids because you went down that path. Understanding it in the moment, like this isn't where we need to beat ourselves up. We just need to be cognizant of it. And me and my wife went to a couples Bible study last night, and we watched a message from CCV out in Arizona, but it was a message on there's a new book on the elimination of hurry.
I've heard of this book. You're like the third person to mention it. The universe is telling me something.
They did a sermon series based upon the book. And so we watched the sermon. It's Ashley Woolridge. And let me just find this real quick. It is the ruthless elimination of hurry. And it talked about having a Sabbath day and not working 7 days a week, and how God can do more with 6 days of work and 1 day of rest than he can with 7 days, and to test him on it and try him on it. And so I'm going to make a concerted effort to take 1 full day off of no work. And it's funny, like if I told people that, they would probably be like, you work 7 days a week? Like, what do? You broadcast on the weekends? I'm like, well, I have a podcast and I go on other podcasts, and I'm writing a book right now, and I have all these things going. We're building a website to promote it's just a lot of things going on. I got 3 investments that are all really good. They could all be sold in the next couple of years. They're really exciting. They're just a lot of meetings and calls and Zooms. And then by 6 o'clock, I have that like Zoom face where it's like my kids when they look at the iPad too long. It's like you just get that glazed look on your face. And so all that being said, that sermon hit me last night. So I'm going to make a concerted effort between now and New Year's to take 1 full day off a week, where it's not emails, it's not podcasts, it's not prepping for a podcast, it's not making calls, it's not prepping for a Bills game, it's not interviewing people. And, there's a lot of media obligations that come within the season, but I just feel like I owe it to myself and my family. And I'm honestly interested to see what God does with it, because I love the concepts of tithing, where there's only one time in the Bible that God says to test him, and that's with your finances. And he says, test me with your finances. I can do more with 90% than you can do with 100%. And we've seen the fruits of that in our life. I've seen the fruits of it in so many other lives. And so now I'm interested to try this Sabbath principle and quit working 7 days a week.
It's funny. The revelation I had, months back was whenever I got to quiet time, things seemed to shift. So my wife and I talk about intentional. My wife and I exchange solo weekends every quarter now. So this is like Friday to Sunday, no kids, no wife, me. I get a room in a local Hampton. That's what I do, a Hampton Inn, like literally a mile from where I live. I'll get a room there Friday to Sunday. My wife goes to like the W Hotel in Fort Lauderdale.
Good for her.
Good for her. But that 3 days, man, like to your point, Friday for me is like oh shoot, let me reply to that email and check that text, and you're still in it. Like you can't just stop, or at least I can't. But by Saturday, you just start to, as long as you're not, you're committing to, I'm not going to watch Netflix. I'm not going to do these things. Like you get in a workout, you meditate, you read. It's hard not to get to a place where you start to get into the depths, to the back of the brain a little bit. And by Sunday, man, you just you got it smoothed out. Like, okay, all right, I've got clarity. I've journaled a whole bunch of crap. No one's ever going to read this, thank God, because it doesn't make any sense. And I can do things with this. I can create ideas. I can, and the noise tones down quite a bit, because you're right. Whether it's one day a week or there's a book, The Road Less Stupid, same thing. He talks about like scheduled quiet time. But for me, because my brain, like when I wake up, it's go, right? My wife is always like, can you just take it down a peg? I'm awake. My brain's talking to me. So that 3 days away, man, that's been powerful for me. So just throwing it out.
That's great. I'd love to hear that. That's really cool.
Yeah, very cool. We only got a few minutes left. I want to ask this question before we wrap and we learn more about where we can learn more about all of what you're doing. But I have to ask this. You've played at the highest levels. I mean, you've been at the pinnacle. I'm curious about a competitor, not so much an athlete, because that's a natural born thing, but a competitor that you played with or against, somebody that stands out, that just was on another level from being a competitor standpoint. Who is that, if you don't mind saying the name? And what was it about them? Are there 2-3 attributes that you saw, habits, routines, anything that you extracted from them on how they were, playing at the top of their game at that, to be such an incredible competitor?
Man, that's a great question. I'll just mention a few teammates. I only played for one team in the NFL, so I'll just mention a few teammates and probably be able to relay some characteristics that could translate to the listeners. So some of my favorite teammates in the NFL were Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been a captain on so many different teams. He's one of the most beloved men in the NFL. I'm so glad that he's blown up over the last few years and let his personality shine in the media, because he is hysterical and he's such a great person. But Fitz's best thing is he can band a group together because he has absolutely no ego. He's willing to do the work himself, just complete dedication throughout the week in preparation for a game, lay it all on the line on Sunday. And as a quarterback, he's generally not going to slide. He might go out and get a block. And at times you're like, dude, you're our starting quarterback. You could not be doing that. That's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Kyle Williams, ultra competitive. One thing I learned from him was before games, he was so calm and cool and collected. He'd sit on the bench and just have a conversation with somebody, while guys are out on the field warming up, save all his energy, and then just go nuts when it counts. Like, where in your life do you need to preserve some energy and then just go nuts when it counts and lay it all out there at that moment? Richie Incognito was extremely invested in his body. Richie's now 39 years old. He's still in the NFL, and you don't get that. You don't play at 330 pounds for that long at that high of a level without being invested in your body. And so are you truly investing in things that are going to propel you forward in your career, in your business, in your relationships? And you know what those are. It may be health and fitness stuff. It may be a gym membership. It may be a coach in the gym. It may be a coach that you work with virtually or in person in your business, but are you investing in yourself to get the best results that you can have?
Eric, where can people find out more about you? Where do you want to direct them so they can learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, my website's called ericwoodmedia.com. It's under construction right now, but it's still up, but the new one will be a whole lot better here in about a month. But on social media, I'm at ewood70. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, but I respond the most personally on Instagram. So if you enjoyed this, hit me up on there, share this podcast, tag me in it. I'll share it as well. And hopefully we can make a big impact through this, Jamie.
Love it, man. Yeah. What's Next with Eric Wood is the podcast. Give that a subscribe and a like. It's a great, I love the Alex Smith episode. I listened to the David Nurse, episode today before on the way to school with my kids. So, man, I appreciate you being on. Thanks for all this.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know down in the comments and make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you can be informed on the next episode and other content right here on this channel. Thank you.